Okay, so now that we have our high poly done, our low poly done, and all unwrapped, it's time to do our bake. So I have the high poly, the low poly out here, okay, and then the high poly turned on, the ones that we baked from. Okay, so we're going to have the low poly crate picked. We're going to go to rendering, go to bake the texture. So with it picked, I want to go to normal, add the selected objects. Okay, so then it's going to come in here. Now, on the normal, okay, to calculate a normal, you have to first turn off your color management system. So we're going to go to rendering, and go to color management. And by default, this will be on 3ds Max. This is just a color correction system based on Gamma setup, which is we want on most of the time. Matter of fact, usually the only time we turn it off is to cast a normal map and an ambient occlusion map. So we're just going to temporarily turn this off, okay? One of the things that's easy to tell that it's not correct is when you come in here, this little color swatch, this background color swatch right here will be a light purple, and it's supposed to be kind of an intense purple. And that tells me right off the bat when I'm looking at something whether the color management system is on. So rendering, color management, and just say unmanaged. Then when I do that, this will turn into a deep purple, a normal purple. And that's a pun, a normal purple. All right, when we're going to do our baking, our final map's going to be a 2048, but to do tests, I would just go ahead and do a 512 or a 1024. I'm going to do a 1024 because the 512 will be a little hard for you guys to see some of this detail. So I'm going to do a 1024. But a lot of times when I'm just doing little garbage tests, I do a 512, so it's really fast. Okay, make sure you have it picked over here. And then you have to pick what you're going to be casting. So I'm going to go from a list. And then the only thing that'll be in here, because it's the only thing showing, is the high poly, and that's what we want. Okay, so we're going to add that in. All right, that's going to add us a modifier over here. Our high poly modifier to bake. This is it automatically will load this in here. Now I want to make sure that I have these pulled apart. So both of these high poly and low poly, make sure I have these on so they're pulled apart. And you'll see this whenever you put these cages on, they initially get all whacked out. Okay. So one of the things I like to do is under my display here, turn shaded on, then it will slightly shade that, which will help us kind of see when we're pushing it out that we get it out far enough. Okay. And so I turn that on. And then you can go down here and you want to click reset, which will snap it back to its original shape. All right, so now the parts that are sticking out are these nails. Okay, so I'm going to look at it from the top. And then I'm going to start on this push to push the cage out. And I'm going to keep pushing it out a little bit at a time until it's out past where those nails are. Okay, so those nails are inside the cast. You can kind of think of this as this box is casting light in, so everything needs to be inside the box. Okay, if it's inside the box, then it'll capture it. Okay, now this, I can already see that it's doing some funky things right in here. Okay, it's kind of doing some odd things. I'm going to go ahead and bake it that way just to show you, and then I'll show you how to correct it. All right, so now we've got our projection on there. Anything that's listed inside of here will be projected on. And we're just going to do a 1024, and then we'll just do I'm going to go create normal, and we'll go, we'll just do underscore this test. Okay, so you can change the name of it right here when you're baking something. Okay, make sure you have the crate pick, because a lot of people actually deselect, and then when they're trying to baking, they're getting errors and they can't figure out why they got errors because it doesn't know what to bake. Even though this is in here, you have to select the low poly to bake. All right, so we'll bake this real quick. You can already see we're getting some weird striations in here because of just the way that it's pushing it, and I'll show you how to fix that. Okay, so this throws people off all the time. They go, well, this looks weird. This is not the final render. The normal render, you have to click here and then it will pop up. Okay, now you'll see I'm getting these weird little sections here which are not right, but the rest of this is looking pretty good. The nails are in there. Now this is low quality right now, so it's all pixelated, but all right, so we need to fix this situation. All right, so let's close this. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over here, and I have sub-object selections, and I'm going to go with the first one, okay, which is a cage. And then I'm just going to select this section right here. Okay, so it's just selecting that. Now we're going to reset that. So go in here and click reset, and that'll fix that. And now we need to scale it, and we need to scale it out just a little bit. And then we need to scale it in a little bit, and we need to scale it in this way and that way. You can do that by grabbing this corner and scaling it in a little bit. Okay. And that way everything is inside of that cage. And then we want to do that on this other side too. Pick here, reset. Oops. Make sure that when you pick it, that you don't pick anything else. Okay, reset. And then scale it out a little bit. And then we want to scale it in on both these axes a little bit. I may decide to maybe come down on that just a little bit, just to make sure everything is inside. Okay. All right. Turn that off, and let's bake again. It's going to tell it to override the other one. And now you'll see it's fixing those areas. Okay, and now you'll see those are cleaned up. And this all looks good. So it looks like it's ready to bake our final Geo bake. All right, so what we're going to want to do now is we're going to change this to a 2048. And the other thing I'm going to do is change my padding. Now the padding is how much around the bake it extends out, so it takes the pixels and extends them out. And nowadays what people do is they just go to 128. They go all the way out. So this will look a little funny. It'll look like some stretching going on. But what it's doing is taking the outside pixels of the normal, and then it's just copying that out, and it fills up all the gaps. All right, so we're going to bake this, and as it's baking, I'm just going to pause it because it'll take a few minutes to bake. Just going to overwrite this one. Okay, so here's my fully baked 2048, ready to go over into Sketchfab, and you'll see that it's extended all of this, so I don't have any black space anymore. So it just takes the edge pixels and extends them out until it meets, one's projected from the other edge. So basically this just allows it that if there's any play or anything in there, that we won't get a little black edge around it. Okay, so let's go over and take this and bring it into Sketchfab. Okay, so here's my model as it is right now in Sketchfab. So let's go in here. We're going to turn on normal map. Okay, and then manage textures, import our texture, import our normal map. Okay, there we go. And then let's go over to our inspector. And so here's what it looks like without the normal map on it. And then with the normal map. Without the normal map, with the normal map. So you can see our nails are in there. It's rolling these edges now. Now, can you see that little seam that's in there? I don't know if you guys can see it or not. That's because I didn't remove the smoothing groups off of the low poly before I brought it in. And of course, I didn't do that because I didn't want to do that until we've got the normal map placed in here. So I'm kind of ignoring that now because I'll bring the model back in without smoothing groups. I'll do that in a minute. So I'm going around here. Now I did notice there's a little weird thing right here in inspecting it. And so I noticed that. Here's go to my 2D, 3D inspector. Okay, and let's go turn our normal map on. And you can see right there, there's a little anomaly, and that's a polygon, a triangle that it doesn't like. Okay, you can see it over there too. But that's an easy fix because we can fix that in Photoshop so we don't have to recast. So let's do those two things. Let's go kick out our low poly with no smoothing groups, and then let's fix that and bring everything back in. Okay, so now the typical way that I show you guys how to get rid of smoothing groups is to put a smooth modifier on this. Auto smooth, 180 degrees. But you'll notice that when I do it this way, that I'm getting some weird striations in here just because of this hole that was put in here. So it's kind of having an issue with that. And so these ends have to have a different smoothing group than the rest of it. Okay, so the easiest way to do that is to do smooth at the sub-object level. So putting this smooth modifier on here is really kind of the lazy man's way of doing smoothing groups, but it works for most of the time. But in this particular case, for most people, if you don't have this hole in here, it'll probably work just fine. But I'm going to show you how to do it without the smooth modifier. So what you're going to do is come back down to your editable poly, and then we're going to pick all of the polygons. And then you've got a section in here called smoothing groups. Okay, let's see if I can get that to come up higher. Yeah, smoothing groups. And so an object will have multiple smoothing groups in it. And when we were putting that modifier on the top, it was just overriding these. Okay, but what I really need now is two smoothing groups. So what I'm going to do is initially pick everything in here, and I'm going to go clear all, and it'll clear all the existing smoothing groups. I'm going to change this to 180 degrees and click auto smooth. And now that's the same thing as we did at the top by putting that on. But now what I can do is I can come in here and I can select these. I'm holding down the control key, and I need to pick all these. And now I'm going to hit auto smooth again, and it's putting them on a different group. Okay, so what's happening is it's trying to roll that edge, and it's kind of doing a weird thing. So they're both 180 degrees, but they're on different islands. Okay, so now this would bake out okay. So what we have to do now is we have to export this out. So file, export selected, and give it a name. And you want to give it a new name because Sketchfab is kind of funny about bringing the same thing in with the same name. Sometimes it doesn't work. So we're going to click OK, and that's going to export this out with the new smoothing groups that we can bring into Sketchfab. Then the other thing we have to do is we have to rebake, because we don't want those smoothing groups in our normal map. So we have to rebake the normal map. So come back in here. It's down here. Okay, and of course I got to have my high poly on. And then rebake this. Okay, and then that will not, so now it will not have the low poly smoothing groups in the normal map. So we don't want the smoothing groups from the low poly in the model itself, and we don't want them baked into the normal map. Okay, once I get rid of those, then I can bring those back into Sketchfab. Okay, I've brought those into Sketchfab, so I re-brought the model back in. So now if we go to our matte cap here, you'll see now there's no edges in here. We've removed the smoothing groups from the low poly, so it's just very kind of rounded, which is what we want, because we want the smoothing groups from the high poly. So it'll just kind of be rounded like that. Okay, and then I brought that new normal map in, and so once I click this matte cap surface, that's adding that normal map back into it. And now you'll see we won't have those lines in there anymore. And so now this normal is nice, other than we've got that little striation, and we're going to go fix that into Photoshop real quick. Okay, so I'm in here in Photoshop, and let's just get this at 100%. And then if I go in and kind of zoom in, you'll see right here is where that issue is. Oops. We'll lock that so I don't accidentally move that. So what I'm going to do is make a new layer on top of that. And then we're just going to go in here and get our spot healing brush. And then just come in here and heal this out. Brush a little bit smaller. There, and then I think there was there's two of them, and you need to make sure you have this on sample all layers. That way, you know, if I do something, I can, you know, I can delete this. But if I'm on this layer and I don't have sample all layers, then it can't see what's below it. You can get into a real pixel here. You can actually get in here with, get your pencil tool and get it set for 1 pixel. And then you can clone the color around it. So Alt key, clone this. So I can really get in here to really edit these. Like that. Let's get up to this other one at the top. Get on close on it. Okay, let's go that one. Let's go that one. Let's go that one. And I think that's probably good enough. Okay, and then we'll save this back out and bring it back into Sketchfab. So I'm exporting this to PNG, by the way. You know, PNG is what Sketchfab uses. So whenever we're saving something out, we don't want to save it as a JPEG or anything else, because it uses PNG. So that's what we want to save it to. All right, let's go bring that back into Sketchfab. Okay, so I brought that back into Sketchfab. And now we can get in here and we can see that little striation is gone there with some little hand manipulation. So at this point, that's a clean normal map. We've got all the issues dealt with, smoothing groups, and so now that part is conquered. Okay, hopefully that helped you. Thank you very much.